So picture this. It's around 1200 BCE. You're living in some nice Bronze Age civilization, plenty of trade, shiny tools, cities with walls, people writing stuff on clay tablets, maybe the occasional goat parade. You've got pottery, imported spices, and that sweet, sweet bronze made from tin and copper shipped in from faraway lands. Life's not perfect. You still die from paper cuts sometimes. But compared to the Stone Age, you're living in the ancient equivalent of a gated community. You've got organized religion, actual roads, and scribes who can keep track of who owes you goats. The neighbors might annoy you with their lyre playing, but overall, things are stable. You've got farmers making surpluses, soldiers guarding borders, and merchants hauling goods in carts that are, by ancient standards, basically Formula One cars. And then, without much warning, the whole interconnected world decides to go full Jenga collapse. Over a few decades, civilizations from Greece to Egypt to Mesopotamia just faceplant. We're talking palaces looted, entire cities burned to ash, trade routes cut like bad hair, and entire writing systems disappearing as if they were on a deleted hard drive. The Eastern Mediterranean becomes a patchwork of ruins and desperate people, and your comfortable palace-adjacent life? Gone. You're now fighting over dried fish in a mud hut. The monumental temples? Looted. The public granaries? Empty. That fancy amphora of olive oil? Sold for a single rat on a stick. The traveling merchants who used to roll in with rare dyes and perfumes? They're now either dead, hiding, or raiding villages to survive. Historians still argue over what exactly caused this flaming train wreck. The main suspects: climate change that led to years of drought, crop failure, and famine, massive earthquakes knocking out city infrastructure, internal rebellions from starving peasants who were done paying taxes in wheat, and the rock stars of destruction, the mysterious sea peoples. Nobody knows exactly where they came from. Maybe the Aegean, maybe Cyprus, maybe a group of angry coastal towns who decided to form the first international raiding coalition. But they rolled up in ships like ancient pirates, raided coastal cities, wrecked armies, and toppled kingdoms. Egypt fought them off barely, but most other places? Not so lucky. The sea peoples didn't politely announce their visit. They'd show up, set your port on fire, kidnap your craftsmen, and sail away with your stuff, leaving only ash, broken pottery, and bad memories. But here's the thing, it wasn't just one bad thing, it was everything at once. Think domino effect with extra fire. Your neighbor's city gets burned, so their trade stops, which means you no longer get tin for bronze. Without tin, you're advanced, weapons are reduced to copper butter knives or Stone Age flint. Meanwhile, other cities are collapsing, so refugees flood your area, eating your food and spreading disease. Raiders see that you're weakened and attack, and your army is either dead, starving, or too busy trying to protect the king's last stash of wine. Even if you somehow keep your city intact, the regional economy is dead. Your merchants are selling donkey skins instead of goods, and your market square smells like fear and onions. Famine is now your full-time job. Long droughts wipe out crops, and without trade networks bringing in grain, you're eating bark soup and pretending it's stew. Malnutrition means you get sick easier, and sickness means you can't work the fields, which means fewer crops, which means more famine. Congratulations, you're now in the ancient apocalypse feedback loop. Forget feasts and festivals. Your big event of the year is fighting over a half-burnt barley cake. And if you think hunting will save you, good luck. Game is scarce because everyone else is also hunting. You'll spend 3 days tracking a deer only to have a group of equally desperate strangers jump you and take the kill. Even if you try to lay low, chaos finds you. Disease spreads through crowded refugee camps where sanitation is just throw your waste outside the tent and hope the gods deal with it. Plague wipes out whole families. Skilled artisans die, so nobody can make pottery, weave fine clothes, or fix carts. Literacy plummets. When the scribes starve or get stabbed, schools shut down, and in some regions writing completely disappears for centuries. Your grandkids will grow up in the ruins of cities they can't even read the names of, and the few surviving elders will just say, "Oh yeah, back in the day we had kings and palaces," while chewing on a rat bone. Meanwhile, technology takes a nosedive. The world is transitioning to iron, but smelting iron is harder, and your blacksmith just starved to death trying. Raiders who do have iron weapons are now basically cheat-coded warriors against your wooden spears. Political systems crumble. Kings get assassinated, kingdoms fracture into warring clans, and every little warlord with a boat decides he's now the rightful ruler of whatever's left. Former allies now raid each other for food. Local militias form. but they're poorly armed, badly trained, and mostly just stand around looking menacing until someone actually attacks. If you're not killed by raiders, famine, or plague, you'll work yourself into the grave. Every day is labor, hauling water, guarding fields, scavenging metal scraps from old ruins just to make a halfway decent knife. You'll wear the same clothes until they rot off you, sleep in smoky huts, and watch the old temples crumble into dust. The good times will be bedtime stories no one believes anymore. And if you're really unlucky, you'll live long enough to see your children grow up just to repeat the same desperate cycle, starving, scavenging, and waiting for raiders. Eventually, the collapse slows, not because things are better, but because there's nothing left to destroy. Some survivors regroup into small farming villages, clinging to whatever scraps of knowledge remain. But it will take centuries before large-scale kingdoms and international trade return. By then, your story will be a half-remembered myth about the time when the world fell apart, told around a fire while gnawing on the same kind of burnt barley bread that started your misery in the first place. Meanwhile, myths start blending with reality. People born after the collapse hear exaggerated stories about the Golden Age, when ships carried treasure, kings ruled with justice, and the gods smiled upon the land. Except most of these tales are told by half-drunk elders who barely remember what actually happened. So over time the history becomes more legend than fact. Your grandson might hear that the sea peoples were literal sea monsters, or that droughts happened because a god got offended by the wrong type of incense. This isn't just harmless gossip. Whole religions and political movements get rebuilt on these warped memories. By the time someone tries to write history again, the truth has been lost in a swamp of heroic epics and supernatural nonsense. Daily life is a grind of paranoia. You don't just farm. You farm while watching the horizon, because raiders can show up any time. Families hide food caches in pits or hollow logs, praying the neighbors don't find them. Walled cities are now rare and mostly half-abandoned, so security means sleeping lightly and having a spear by the bed. Kids grow up learning to fight before they learn to write, because what's the point of literacy if you're dead? Even weddings and funerals are stripped-down affairs. No dowries, no banquets, just a quick handshake, maybe a goat if you're lucky, and then back to survival mode. And perhaps the cruelest twist? You might not even know you're in a collapse. To you, this is just life. You'll never see the scale of the disaster because news doesn't travel far anymore. You might think your little valley is doing okay. Sure, there's less trade and more raiders, but things could be worse, completely unaware that beyond the mountains, entire empires have vanished. By the time you realize the world you knew is gone, it's not a tragedy anymore. It's just the new normal. And that's the real horror of the Bronze Age collapse. It wasn't one big apocalypse. It was the slow, grinding reality that the best days were over and nobody was coming to save you.